Man, that is how you write a sequel. Guys, I am so happy that I continued reading The Faithful and the Fallen because Valor mostly fixes all of the issues I had with the first book. Mostly. Now, quick heads up, since this is book 2, there will be some spoilers for Malice. If you haven't read the first book yet, I've already reviewed it, and you can find that linked in the description below. So go check it out and then come back. If Malice was about setting up the world, the characters, and the prophecy-driven conflict, then Valor is where Gwynne throws it all into motion. This book does not let up. We've got full-scale battles, betrayals, kidnappings, chases, you name it. If you thought Malice had a solid pace, Valor takes it and cranks it all the way up to 11. See, the Banished Lands are now fully engulfed in war. Corban, once just a blacksmith's son, is now a fugitive and reluctant leader, gathering a growing band of outcasts and warriors as he flees from those who would see him dead. His journey takes him across hostile territories, and this is where he's forced into the role of leader, whether he wants it or not. What makes Corban's arc so compelling is that he isn't some power-hungry chosen one. He doesn't even want the mantle of heroism, and that struggle is woven into every decision he makes. And yet his natural charisma, sense of loyalty, and unwavering moral core continue to draw people to him, forging the bonds of what will likely be the defining resistance force in this escalating conflict. His bond with Storm, his gigantic murder wolf, continues to be one of the best parts of the book. It's not an original fantasy trope, the whole boy and his dog dynamic, but it's done so well that you don't care. It makes Corban deeply sympathetic, and it's one of those relationships that just feel real. On the other side, we have King Nathair, who still believes he's the rightful savior of the world, even as he's being manipulated into doing the bidding of much darker forces. His ambition is fascinating to watch because, unlike a typical villain, he doesn't see himself as one. He truly believes he's acting for the greater good, and that self-righteous certainty is what makes him so dangerous. He's playing right into the hands of Calidus, who has this patience and cunning of a proper long-game schemer, always making moves behind the scenes and always pulling the right strings. Then there's Veritas, Nathair's most loyal general, who is in some ways the most tragic character in the book. His faith in Nathair remains unshakable, even as cracks begin to form in his perception of what they're fighting for. He's an incredibly skilled warrior and tactician, but his internal conflict is just as compelling as his battlefield prowess. Watching him wrestle with his conscience while still trying to justify Nathair's increasingly questionable actions makes for some of the most gripping moments of the novel. And I have to give a shout out to Camlin. He wasn't necessarily a standout in Malice, but Valor gives him so much more depth. He starts as a rogue who mostly looks out for himself, but here he starts forming real bonds with others. He finds himself in a fatherly role he never expected, and watching him wrestle with that newfound sense of responsibility is one of the book's best surprises. Meanwhile, Cohen, Corban's sister, she finds herself trapped behind enemy lines, forced to rely on nothing but her own wit and determination to survive. Her arc is one of survival and quiet resistance. She doesn't have Corban's physical prowess, but she has a sharp mind and a will that refuses to be broken, and this makes her one of the strongest characters in the story. And then there's Makwin. Oh, Makwin. This guy suffers in Valor. If you're looking for a character who gets thrown into the worst possible situations and has to claw his way out, Makwin is your guy. His story is one of vengeance and endurance, and I found myself eagerly awaiting his chapters just to see what the hell Gwynne would put him through next. If Corban was my favorite character in Malice, Makwin is my favorite character in Valor. Valor takes everything that worked, and even some of the things that didn't work, in Malice and dials them up. The pacing is sharper, the stakes are higher, and the world feels even richer. If Malice was all about setting up the chessboard, Valor is where the pieces start smashing into each other. One of the biggest strengths of Valor is that it doesn't just expand the story. It builds on the character work from Malice beautifully. You're not just watching events unfold. You feel the stakes because you're already invested in these characters. And it's not just that we follow familiar faces, we see them grow, change, and struggle under the weight of everything they've lost and everything they still stand to lose. And this book, man, it is fast. The pacing is relentless, with battle after battle, chase after chase, and a constant forward momentum that never gives the characters, or the readers, much time to breathe. But what makes it work is that Gwynne still carves out space for the emotional weight of everything happening. Guys, Gwynne knows how to write action. That much is clear. There are a lot of battles in Valor, but what's impressive is that they never feel repetitive. Each one serves a purpose. Each one reveals something new, whether it's about the characters, about the stakes, or about the world. Some authors, they throw in fights just for the spectacle, but here, every battle matters. Every moment has consequences, and the few times the story slows down, it really hits. There are scenes where the characters finally get to moment to mourn, to reflect on what they've lost, and because those moments are so rare, they carry even more weight. And let's talk about the world building, because Valor takes everything that Malice did well and expands on it. If you thought Malice had clear influences from Celtic, Welsh, and Roman history, Valor goes even deeper, especially into Irish myth. There's also a clear historical influence in how the battles are fought. Tenebral's military, they're structured, disciplined, and shield wall based, and they feel straight out of Rome. Meanwhile, Corban's forces fight like the Gauls. They're chaotic, individualistic, and full of personal duels within a larger battle. Gwynne clearly drew inspiration from Caesar's Gallic Wars, and if you're a history nerd, you're going to appreciate the layers here. The Kingdom of Darwin feels distinctly Irish, from its language to its customs to the fact that they apparently drink stout instead of mead. The giants of the Banished Lands are steeped in Irish influences. Nimoy, their queen, she shares her name with one of the Morrigan goddesses from Irish legend, a deity associated with war and fate. Then there's Balor One-Eye, a direct reference to Balor of the Fomorians, a monstrous figure from Irish myth. Gwynne doesn't just use these names as set dressing. He weaves them into the fabric of the world, making the Banished Lands feel like a place with deep ancient roots. And that's something I love about the series. It's that Tolkien-esque impulse to ground fantasy and world mythology. And it works beautifully here. Just like how the Lord of the Rings pulled from Old English and Norse, or how the Poppy War is infused with Chinese history, The Faithful and the Fallen feels like it has one foot in legend and the other in gritty, fast-paced modern storytelling. Ultimately, what makes Valor work so well is that it never loses sight of its heart. Yes, it's a brutal, action-heavy fantasy. Yes, it has massive battles, betrayals, and nonstop momentum. But at its core, it's a book about people, about loyalty, grief, hope, and the choices we make when we believe we're fighting for something bigger than ourselves. Characters make this book shine and stand out in a crowded field. Valor is absolutely gripping, and by the time you reach the final pages, you'll be desperate for ruin. If you enjoyed Malice, then Valor is an absolute must-read. No hesitation. It takes everything that worked in the first book, the compelling characters, the brutal stakes, and the fast-paced storytelling, and pushes it even further. The action is relentless, the world expands in fascinating ways, and the emotional weight behind every battle and betrayal hits harder than ever. But let's say you haven't started The Faithful and the Fallen yet. Is this a series worth your time? Well, if you're a fan of classic fantasy with a modern action-driven edge, then yeah, this is exactly the kind of series that will hook you. Gwynne's writing has an old-school feel, with clear influences from The Lord of the Rings and A Song of Ice and Fire, but it moves at a breakneck pace that makes it feel fresh and immediate. He balances the classic fantasy tropes with the heroic warriors and ancient prophecy in a war between good and evil with a level of realism that makes every moment feel earned. Guys, I'm absolutely loving this series. Gwynne has a way of blending fast-paced action with deep emotional stakes that just works. And as someone who loves mythology, I can't get enough of the way that he weaves in Celtic and Roman influences to make the world feel rich and lived in. At its heart, Valor is about truth and courage, about standing for what's right, even when the cost is unbearable. Some books revel in moral ambiguity, but Gwynne reminds us that sometimes you just need a hero willing to take a stand, even if that hero isn't sure he's ready for it. So, am I ready for ruin? Absolutely. Am I also deeply afraid of what Gwynne is going to do to my favorite characters? Also, yes. Now, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends, family, and even your enemies. Just no evil pirates with gladiatorial fighting pits. And of course, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button because every subscriber inches me one step closer to taking over the Galaxies. Until next time, take care, keep reading, and I'll see you in the next one.